Thank you, President Trump, for taking MAGA and America first and walking it out into the yard and shooting it in the back of the head. Great job.
Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
There is despair. Despair. People can't afford homes. They can't afford to have children. There is no hope. Are we all to be wage slaves to tens, hundreds of thousands of Indians in our nation? Is that the superior culture? Is that what we're supposed to believe? That the Americans who invented the nuclear bomb, put men on the moon, won World War II through productivity and technology, invented the computer, invented the internet. That nation doesn't have what it takes to compete with third world savages? I don't believe that. Now, of course, you all come here for the truth, not for clickbait hysteria. And the truth is, these comments can be contextualized, and we'll do a bit of that here today. But the way politics is fundamentally about human beings, and human beings are not inherently rational creatures. We're emotional creatures. And how the American people who see themselves hanging off the cliff of national demise by their fingernails, and Trump has grabbed their wrists and is pulling them back up off the cliff, and then he just lets go. That's what this feels like. I imagine this is what it would feel like for a guy to come home from work and find his wife in bed with somebody else. It feels like abandonment, like betrayal. And people are going to respond on that emotional basis. And the only way to mitigate that would be to check this hard right now. Because if this emotional state remains in place among Trump's strongest supporters, and I'll share a bunch of that with you, it's over. It's over. Trump support is fundamentally MAGA, make America great again, and America first. The opposite of the Democrat scheme to drown our nation in tens of millions, hundreds of millions of third world invaders. H-1Bs are the enemy of MAGA, the enemy of America first, as much or more than the illegal migrants. And these comments, I hope Trump is getting an earful today, because whatever he may have intended to say, the emotional message here is a big "you're number one" to his core supporters. Savannah Hernandez, one of the biggest Trump supporters you could imagine, independent journalist, writes, Trump needs to get out of his bubble and back on the ground listening to the American people who elected him to work for us. His H-1B comment shows how out of touch with the base he has become. Disheartening. All right, so Savannah expanded on these comments, and I really thought it was a good take and reflects how many people feel about these H-1B comments from Trump. So I want to share the whole thing with you. Savannah Hernandez writes, I'm tired of based social media videos and big talk from the administration with zero follow-through. We, Trump supporters, MAGA, America First, voted for home affordability, and we were given 50-year mortgages and debt slavery. We voted for mass deportations, and we can't even get Kilmar Abrega Garcia, human trafficker, spouse abuser, final order of deportation, 2019, out of the country. We have a sitting U.S. Congresswoman who openly declares her loyalty to Somalia, and the best we can do is joke about deporting her. Antifa was linked to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and after labeling them a domestic terrorist organization, there's been zero follow-through, and they're more emboldened than ever. People are being arrested for anti-Semitic attacks. Meanwhile, it's Christian children who are being targeted and killed in the middle of mass, and it's mobs of violent leftists who continue to scream, kill white people, with zero repercussion. American students are drowning in debt, and the administration has responded by making them compete with 600,000 Chinese students. Oh, and if you're lucky enough to get a degree, you're still going to have to compete with a Republican-promoted H-1B visa hire that will work for half your pay. And don't get me started on the Department of Justice priorities or lack thereof, Pam Bondi. This is why the right wing is divided, because Americans voted to feel safe, prioritized, and protected. And every time we try to voice our concerns, we're labeled as anti-MAGA, anti-Israel, anti-Trump for bringing forth substantial criticism of the direction of the party. I've watched the right wing implode over the last 2 weeks, and the reason we are is because many are afraid to legitimately criticize the administration. It's our job to openly put the pressure on when we don't feel the country is headed in the right direction. Absolutely. If we refuse to do so, we're no better than the entire left who refuse to criticize Biden for his entire administration. And by the way, I would suggest that a good motto for times like these is always chimp out. Don't be restrained in your outrage to Trump and Trump supporters. Frankly, it's been my experience that Trump responds generally well when he realizes he's misstepped. Now's a good time to let Trump know that he has badly misstepped. That's me talking, not Savannah Hernandez. Julian's Rum says, if this is the platform, just import H-1Bs and give hundreds of thousands of college seats to Chinese. None of us are going to bother voting at the midterms because there's clearly no point. This is betrayal. There's no other word for it, and it certainly feels that way, doesn't it? Benny Johnson says Charlie Kirk was killed a few days after posting this. This was Charlie's final policy push to save America and signal to the young, the people Charlie Kirk reached out to, the college student, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, who feel they've had no opportunity in their own nation, who feel that they're drowned out of college by competing with hundreds of thousands of Chinese who pay double the tuition with Chinese cash money, who feel that even if they graduate, now they have to compete against hundreds of thousands of H-1B visa holders who can't do the work, but they're cheap and they get hired for cost purposes and through ethno-fascist nepotism of Indians already hired into company bureaucracy. There is despair. Despair. People can't afford homes. They can't afford to have children. There is no hope. Are we all to be wage slaves to tens, hundreds of thousands of Indians in our nation? Is that the superior culture? Is that what we're supposed to believe? That the Americans who invented the nuclear bomb, put men on the moon, won World War II through productivity and technology, invented the computer, invented the internet, that nation doesn't have what it takes to compete with third world savages? I don't believe that. We were working on this together. That work continues. Here's Charlie's post. Rest in peace, Charlie. He writes, this is the social compact breaking down. We need urgency. This chart. The chart is percentage of 30-year-olds who are both married and homeowners. Starts in 1950, about 50%. Now it's down to about, 5%, 10%? The collapse is in the graph. People cannot buy homes. If people can't buy homes, they don't get married. They don't get married, they don't have children. There are no families. There is no America. The nation is its people. Demography is our destiny. And this is all fixable. This is fixable. How do you fix it? Charlie knew. Mass deportations. Get rid of the 90 million illegal migrants in our nation. Stop the H-1B scam, importing hundreds of thousands of third world Indians who are no more capable than Americans. They're less capable, but they work at a fraction of the price. Why are we forcing our own American citizens to compete on that basis within our own nation? How is that in America's interest? Why are we requiring all American citizens to compete for every scarce resource, employment, education, housing, healthcare, social services, with tens of millions of third world invaders, legal and illegal? How does that make America more America? Dramatically reduce legal immigration. That's part of stopping the H-1B scam. End chain migration and the visa lottery. Build 10 million American homes. We actually don't need to build a damn thing. If we deport 100 million third world migrants from America, we've just opened up 25 million units of housing without having to spend a penny, without having to drive a nail, without having to get a building permit, zoning, none of it. We don't need third world labor to build homes for us. The homes are there. They're just currently occupied by tens of millions, hundreds of millions of third world migrants. And crush the college cartel. We're going to circle back to that in just a moment because Trump talks in the interview with Laura Ingraham, and we'll get to that, about how, there's 600,000 Chinese. We need them in colleges because they pay a lot of money. The colleges, the university system is the enemy of America. The propaganda arm of the progressive fascists, the indoctrination arm, the re-education camps of our enemy. Trump says half of them will go out of business if we don't allow the 600,000 Chinese to attend. Should that be the goal? Should that not be the goal? These are some of Trump's biggest supporters on X. If you're not familiar with them, I can tell you I see them champions for Trump. Look how they're taking this. Trump saying we don't have enough talented people in this country was the biggest betrayal to his base and his political career. Absolutely unreal thing to say. And to add insult to injury, he said it in the context of importing more Indians, of all people. Indians, not Germans or Brits, not Australians, not white South Africans, not people who have any cultural affinity with America, who might have some prospect of actually assimilating into our great country. No, it's in the context of importing more third worlders, Hindus, no interest in assimilating into America, whose entire culture, upbringing, worldview is completely incompatible with fundamental principles of civil rights and society in a Western first world nation. Kevin Sorbo, the actor, he was in, of course, 600 with the abs, huge supporter of Trump. His response, what an atrocious thing to say. This will cost Republicans the midterms. And it might well cost them the midterms. Matt Morse, I am one of the largest pro-Trump commentators in the nation. I get tens of millions of views every single month talking about Trump's America First agenda. And right now, I'm absolutely effing beyond pissed off that tonight, as a justification for H-1B visas, Trump said that Americans don't have talent. Absolutely unreal. Lane Kendall, this might go down as the most disastrous interview of his presidency. Frankly, folks, of any presidency. Nothing Trump's been saying even barely resembles the reason his base elected him. It sounds like he's just parroting talking points that his Silicon Valley bros have fed him. Matt Walsh, with whom I've had my share of disagreements on many issues, although we agree on most things and we agree on this. Even if it were true that we don't have enough talented people in this country, which it isn't, that would be all the more reason to stop importing foreigners. We need to train up our own people. Give actual Americans a shot. America is for Americans. Damn right, Matt. Aesthetica, another huge Trump-supporting account, writes about Trump's comments completely out of touch. Clearly has had no contact with the base in a long time. What are the people in his circle doing? Where are you, Stephen Miller? Where are you? I don't expect much from Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem and some of the others, but Stephen, come on, man. This account writes, Dear Donald Trump, you clearly don't know what Americans want, so I'll tell you, we want 0 Chinese students in our universities. We want 0 H-1B visas. We want 30 million illegals deported, more like 90 million. We want 20-year mortgages to replace 30 years, not 50-year mortgages. And by the way, that would be achievable if we cleared open 25 million units of housing in America. You think housing would become more affordable? You think people would be able to make the payments on a 20-year mortgage? Maybe have their home paid off by the time they retire? And we want lots and lots of perp talks. Thank you. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Bowtied Ranger, another huge Trump supporting account, writes Trump's getting absolutely annihilated on the timeline and social media. Never seen the right give him this level of pushback before. The anti-H-1B genie ain't going back into the bottle. And the anti-H-1B chimps aren't going back in their cages. Always chimp out. If you're outraged, act like it. Patrick Howley, reporter. It's so sad to be at odds with my hero, Donald Trump, now, but that's where we are. MAGA made it through 2 impeachments, January 6 prosecutions, 2 assassination attempts, Charlie Kirk as well. And now it's being undone by the corporate lobby and by Trump himself. In terms of America having no talent, this guy notes, we had 0 experienced housewives making aircraft and tanks in World War II, including the incredibly sophisticated B-29. And POTUS acts like we can't train Americans to make batteries. And I do want to circle back to that, because the second half of this little clip I played at the start, he starts talking about batteries, the battery plant, the Hyundai battery plant that was raided by ICE. So let's go back to the clip and listen to it from the start again, and this time include his references to the battery plant.
When
we
a
have
country
plenty of talented people
no,
here.
you don't. No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing. It's very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, so he's talking about this plant. Unfortunately, Trump's not quite right about what was going on at that plant. As this guy notes, Trump's example of the Hyundai battery trainers, this guy says, is a valid example of temporary work visa that makes sense. Although it's got nothing to do with H-1Bs. Bring them in. They know how to make the batteries. They train Americans to make the batteries. Then they leave, and we have trained Americans. That's a model that would work. But that's not what actually happened. They had 3 people die in that plant because of safety issues. OSHA came in because of the deaths and did an investigation. And it turned out there were hundreds of people there being paid $5 an hour, working illegitimately on a B-1 visa. So OSHA appropriately notified ICE. Hyundai battery plants don't get a magic exemption from American immigration law. They have to follow it. If America built a plant in South Korea, we wouldn't simply be allowed to flood that plant with Americans without abiding by South Korean immigration law. A terrible example. Now, are there somewhat more positive ways to contextualize Trump's comments? And there are, in fairness, and I think we need to be fair. It doesn't change the emotional impact of what he said. We've already seen that. So Trump started talking about how we don't have talent. Is it possible he was talking about very narrow, specific skill sets? Missiles, battery technique, that he remains like he was in 2016, opposed to exploitative H-1B use, which is, of course, the large majority of it. But he wants America to have access to genuine world-class talent that we may currently lack. Is that possible? Yeah. Would that be a reasonable position to take? It would to me. I would accept that. If we were importing only people with multi-decades of experience, verifiable experience, not this fraudulent experience these Indians sell us, with 130 IQs, with expertise in narrow silos that we actually cannot in the moment, and sometimes the moment matters, replicate in America, I would be for bringing those people in. We've always had O-1 visas for geniuses, but they're in the hundreds. They're not in the tens or hundreds of thousands. And those small numbers of people don't threaten America's cultural integrity. They don't turn America into India. So to the extent he's talking about specific skills and remains opposed to the large bandwidth, high volume importation of midwit Indians on H-1Bs, I think that's reasonable. This guy notes, it's called having a skills gap. You can't put everything on hold while you train up the people you need to fill those gaps. It's mad that Trump is attacked for wanting to reduce low-skilled workers, which does reduce wages, and also wanting to bring in high-skilled workers. Here's the problem. Did you get this sentiment from Trump's comments to Laura Ingraham? Did he communicate this to you? Hey, I still want to exclude the low-skilled workers, the H-1B abuse, but there are select high-skilled workers I want to be able to bring in. Would anyone be opposed to that as a national American strategy? I mean, some might, but I think it's a reasonable national strategy. But is this what Trump communicated in that interview? I would suggest it's not. I would suggest what he communicated is what evinced the emotional response we've been covering throughout this show. This account says, I think Trump was speaking to niche industries, hence his comment about building missiles. However, it was extremely poorly worded. Maybe the tech bros in Washington are distracting him too much with their agenda. Well, I'm sorry, but you're in politics. The wording matters. The emotional impact your words have on the body politic who elected you to lead them. It obviously matters. Poorly worded statements that cost you the midterms, that cost MAGA, that cost America first, that return America into the hands of the Democrats. That's a real world consequence. You don't just get to wave it away as poorly worded. That's like a surgeon effing up a surgery and say, oh yeah, I poorly cut that one. Sorry about that. My bad. No, if you're in politics, if you're in leadership, the words mean things. The words have consequences.